Theodore Roosevelt, newly widowed from Alice Hathaway Lee, was photographed in 1885 in the Badlands of North Dakota, wearing cowboy attire and posing beside his patrol horse. He used to call President William McKinley a vacillating politician. Even so, in March 1901, he joined him as vice president, and with McKinley's assassination in September of the same year, became President of the United States. Daughters of Cheyenne. Portrait taken on the occasion of Chief American Horse's visit to Billings, Montana, in 1901. Two young Cheyenne women dressed in printed cotton skirts and tribal shawls pose beside a pine tree. The one on the left faces her companion, who returns her gaze toward the camera. At the end of the 19th century, itinerant photographers rarely managed to overcome the great distances and rough roads that separated urban centers from the small homesteads on the western frontier of the United States. When they did arrive, residents emptied the inside of the house, dragged their most representative belongings into the yard, and in front of the camera staged a visual narrative of economic progress. Portrait of Bull Half-White, known to whites as Curly, a Crow Scout who served Lieutenant Colonel Custer. In the photo, he wears tribal garb and his hair in braids. From a nearby hill, he witnessed the Battle of the Little Bighorn on June 25, 1876, and later reported Custer's defeat. On June 2, 1899, near Wilcox, Wyoming, a Union Pacific train was forced to stop at a bridge. 4 thieves ordered the engineer and fireman to uncouple the locomotive and the express car. When the engine moved forward, the gang blew up the bridge with dynamite, isolating the rest of the cars. They then blew open the express car safe, took about $30,000 in cash and securities, and fled on horseback. The robbery was attributed to Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch. On April 8, 1905, shortly after the notorious shootout in Canyon Diablo, Arizona, lawmen took the outlaw John Shaw's body out of the coffin, propped it against a wooden fence in front of the saloon, and pressed a bottle to his lips for a last swig of whiskey while the photographer captured the scene. Portrait of a Sundance leader, circa 1908, regarded as one of the most admired images of this ceremony. A northern Cheyenne man, name not preserved, photographed in southeastern Montana, with red and black paint on his body and crowns of branches, performing the rite that marks the community's cycles of apparent death and rebirth. Harry Campbell, a cowboy from the Matador Ranch, trims the hair of Canadian writer and journalist George Patello in front of the half-dugout line cabin that served as the ranch's first headquarters. Texas, 1908. Anna Emmeline McDoulet, nicknamed Cattle Annie, began riding armed at age 13 in the Oklahoma Territory. Together with her friend Jenny Stevens, Little Britches, she mastered revolver and carbine. The pair captured and resold horses, traded whiskey with the Osage and Pawnee peoples, and supplied ammunition to outlaw gangs until they were arrested in 1895. Texas cowboy with a beat-it-all holster. Beside him, a Plains Indian, perhaps Kiowa or Comanche. He wears boots with spurs, a belt with a large knife and revolver. The thermoplastic holster bears decorative scrollwork. Photo from around 1870. The pose highlights boots, gun, and knife. John Liver-Eating Johnson. After a Crow warrior murdered his Flathead wife in 1847, Johnson began a long vendetta. According to accounts, he killed more than 300 Crow warriors and ate their livers in retaliation. Bob Levitt's Saloon, Jordan, Montana, CA, 1904. Leighton Alton Huffman's photograph shows a group of cowboys sitting at the establishment's doorway, taking a break from work. A saddled horse stands in front of the threshold, ready to continue the journey. In October 1862, a few weeks after the Battle of Antietam, President Abraham Lincoln traveled to Sharpsburg, Maryland to inspect Union troops. With him were Allen Pinkerton, Chief of Army Intelligence, and Major General John Alexander McClernand, during a visit to the camp set up near the former battlefield. Wounded Knee Creek, South Dakota. On the morning of December 30th, 1890, a few hours after the massacre of 12 29ths, soldiers of the 7th Cavalry Regiment assembled the Lakota to collect weapons, fearing the ghost dance would spark a revolt. During the search, a single shot, source uncertain, caused riflemen and Hotchkiss guns to open fire. In less than an hour, between 150 and 300 indigenous people fell, mostly women and children. Photo taken in 1948 documenting the final gathering of the last living participants of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, held near the former battleground in Montana. The photographer Bill Grote died in 2020. In 1907, Indigenous guide Samson Beaver of the Stoney Nakoda Nation was photographed by explorer Mary Schaffer alongside his wife Leah and their daughter Frances Louise. The family portrait, now widely reproduced, marked the meeting that led Schaffer to map Chaba Imni, now Moline Lake, from Beaver's hand-drawn map, highlighting cooperation between Indigenous knowledge and Euro-Canadian exploration. In 1890 in Oregon, gold extraction by hydraulic mining consisted of aiming high-pressure hoses at the bank, stripping away layers of earth to dissolve the gold-bearing gravel. The eroded soil washed into valleys, silting waterways. To install pipes, pumps, and sluices, trees were felled, leaving clearings that reveal the operation's lasting environmental impact. A member of a native nation stands on a rocky outcrop, watching the newly linked Transcontinental Railroad in Nevada, 1869. In front, the Humboldt River winds before disappearing between stone walls. The rails and ties represent the technological advance of the United States, and at the same time the forced occupation of tribal lands. Today, the same line crosses the canyon near Carlin. Two brothers from Mercer County, West Virginia, who in 1910 were still remembered for having served in opposing armies during the American Civil War. One wore the Confederate uniform, the other remained loyal to the Union. Jefferson Randolph "Soapy" Smith stands behind the counter of his Jeff Smith's Parlor in Skagway, Alaska. A notorious con man of the Old West, he ran rigged raffles, shell games, and telegraph scams, keeping his associates under strict command and bribing local authorities. In 1898, at the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, the town teemed with prospectors and speculators, fertile ground for his frauds. A family rests in the shade of a large tree behind their covered wagon. On the rear of the vehicle hangs an open chuck box with shelves of pots, metal plates, provisions, and a folding board used as a kitchen and food preparation area. Location: 3-block range, New Mexico, 1908. Between 1890 and 1900, somewhere east of Salem, Oregon, conifers blanket the terrain. Felled trunks indicate logging that years later gave way to farmland. Around 1905, on the dirt road near Dodge City, Kansas, the Price family lines up in front of the board and batten facade of their rural home for a glass plate photo. At left, Bill Cope balances a puppy on the bicycle frame while the other relatives, wide-brimmed hats in place, look calmly at the lens. A 1910 photograph shows a man riding an elk through the streets of Sheridan, Wyoming. Although rare at the turn of the century, these cervids were already being trained to pull sleds and serve as mounts on northern farms. At Jackson's Bar, Idaho, 1890s, the proprietor holds a rifle behind the counter. The weapon served not only for immediate defense but also to legitimize his authority in a territory where formal law barely reached, and self-reliance was a matter of survival. Historic photograph bringing together 3 Confederate guerrilla commanders active after the Civil War. From left to right are Arch Clements, Dave Poole, and Bill Hendricks, photographed in Sherman, northern Texas, circa the 1860s. Formal studio portrait showing an indigenous woman of the Aaninin Nation, facing forward, calm gaze, discreet traditional adornments. Her full name takes a prisoner blackbird, carries memories of resistance. She lived on the Fort Belknap Reservation, Montana. Two women wearing long skirts and simple hats exchange words on a clear morning on Cutler Street, the main commercial avenue of Helena in the Montana Territory, around 1885. In the background, wooden facades and wagons complete the scene. Photograph C 1885 shows a soldier of the U.S. 10th Cavalry Regiment, in field uniform, beside three Apache scouts who were working with the Army. The scene was captured at Fort Whipple, a military post near Prescott in the Arizona Territory. A settler family established in the Loup Valley, Nebraska in 1886, consisting of parents and three children, growing wheat and raising cattle on the riverbank, living in a newly built log cabin amid the vast fields of the American Midwest. A 1892 photograph captures the main street of the mining town of Creede, Colorado, a dirt road along which wagons travel, rows of wooden shops on both sides, a post office sign in view, telegraph poles lining the way, and the arid slope cutting the horizon. Saloon, founded by Orland Osgood in 1905 in the newly created Carter County, Montana. It served as bar, gambling table, and basic lodging for cattlemen, prospectors, and travelers crossing the wagon routes toward the farms of the state's southeast. This photo belongs to the set of everyday portraits of open-range cowboys, captured on glass plates by photographer Irwin E. Smith between 1905 and 1912. Showing cattle handling, camp life, and rides on ranches in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona.